So I'm joined today with Matthew Kelly on the Panto podcast. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Hello, love. All right, Jim.
Yeah, so the Panto podcast, we've been chatting about. I'm a bit disappointed you've not had a listen yet. You really should give it a go.
I don't listen to podcasts because I don't know how to do them.
I'll show you. You're missing things.
Missing a treat, obviously. Listening to all my favourite people talking. Look at that. See that? That is a postcard from Alan Bennett with a hand-drawn cartoon of himself in pen and ink. Which, yeah, I know. Thanking me for doing this part. Don't know why he's thanking me. It's a job.
Well, what was your first introduction to pantomime?
Right. It was Panto that made me want to go into the theatre because when I was 5, I went on a works outing with my dad, who had a printing works in Earlham, only small, right? And we had a works outing to the circus, and I absolutely hated it. I thought it was cold, frightening, embarrassing. I was appalled by it, didn't find it funny. I just wanted to go home. The following year, when I was 6, we went to the Ardwick Hippodrome and we saw a pantomime. And it was fantastic because it was warm and it was golden and it was magical. And I didn't want to be one of the kids dragged on at the end for the exploitation. I wanted to know what happened when, particularly the funny enough, the chorus girls who tap dance in white tap shoes, white Mary Janes, and as they tapped off into the wings, like beyond that frame, I wanted to know what happened there and how it works. And even now, when I sit in the wings and it's all unlit and it all looks drab and unmagical, and what a dresser of mine once called all that goof-fuck shit and tassel, and you'd be sitting on a skip and the fairy godmother would come round traipsing her wand behind her, and I'd be looking between the wings at what was going on stage, and I know what the audience doesn't know. And that's what I still find fantastically magical, even now.
So how did you actually take that leap from watching it through to actually becoming part of it?
From that moment on, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on the stage, and I knew, and everybody else knew, and it excused my appalling behaviour and my shocking academic career, because everybody would just go, oh, well, he's going to be an actor anyway. So they didn't bother. So nobody minded me at all. So from that moment on, I knew I was going to be playing in the dressing up box. And because it was Panto, and in fact I even changed churches when I was a kid so that I could be in the congregational annual pantomime. And my very first appearance was at the age of 7 as Happy the Dwarf in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And then from that time on, I was in a pantomime every year. So I did 10 pantos before I was a professional. And then I became a professional at the age of 17. And the first professional panto I did was at Stockport, Devonport, with Wilfrid Bramble as the Dame, Danny Ross as Buttons, and no, it can't have been. No, it was Aladdin. Danny Ross was Wishy Washy. That's right. And Eve Boswell was Aladdin. Well, she was South African, and she was diminutive, and she had 2 massive hit records in the 50s. Right, she was not an easy woman, and her 2 big hit records were Picking a Chicken and Sugar Bush. But of course, by the time it got to me doing that, it was 1967, right? And so when it came to her spot in the show, I used to have to run round, because I was doing the props, you see. I used to have to run round to the front of house and go in the back, and she'd say any requests, and I had to shout from the audience, "Picking a chicken, sugar bush," and she'd go, "Oh, did you hear picking a chicken? I'll sing that for you." Yeah, so I used to do the props for that. So that was my first professional pantomime.
And what about acting?
Acting, well, when I was 17, it was like running away and to join the theatre, because I was a stooge, and I stooged for Mr. Pastry, Richard Hearn, and I used to make his custard pies for him, and I was also a stooge in his show as well. So that kind of started getting me onto the stage. But I also did a lot of stage management. And I did every aspect of theatre. I was a stage manager, and I was in theatre in education, I was in children's theatre, used to do pub shows, I used to do Christmas shows in rep. And I did like variations on The Wizard of Oz, variations on Peter Pan. I've also done Peter Pan as a play, which is very long and very dreary. But I've done several musical versions of Peter Pan. Peter Pan doesn't work as a panto, actually, I don't think, because it hasn't any of the elements in it that you should have. It doesn't have a dame, and I think all pantos should have a dame. What was the first thing I did was... Oh, right, yes, I know. The first time I appeared in a professional pantomime was in a tour of Cinderella. And I hadn't really thought about this today. But what happened was, it was in 1969. I remember, because my son was born in 1970. And in 1969, I was going to do this tour of Cinderella, right? And it was playing the Victoria Theatre, Broughton Bridge, right? Because we're in Salford now. That's Broughton Bridge is part of Salford. I don't know if the theatre's still there. And it was going to the Palace Theatre, Rose Llanarugog, the Playhouse Louth, the State Cinema Gainsborough, but it opened at the Queen's Theatre, Burslem. And that year, there was a terrible flu epidemic. And so everybody was dying of flu, I mean really dying of flu. It was so bad that when I was in Burslem, nobody would come to the theatre, or if they did, they had to sit separately, because everybody was catching it. And they were using a garage around the corner from my digs as a mortuary. Because, yeah, so many people died. And so lots of people in the show were affected. And there was a guy called Dave Peters, and he was originally playing Dandini, and he moved up to play Buttons, or did it? No, hang on. I can't remember who was playing Buttons. Anyway, I got moved from stage management into the part of Dandini, and that was my first professional pantomime, right, playing Dandini. And Old Mother Riley was in it. And Old Mother Riley was one of the sisters, which is about... it was Roy Roland, not Arthur Lucan. Roy Roland was Arthur Lucan's understudy, and in fact did most of the work in Arthur Lucan's latest films with Kitty McShane. And the flu was so bad, even the geese got it. There was Joe Gandy's miniature circus in it, and all the geese died of flu. And on the opening night, during the show, we were reduced to 4 chorus girls, which went down to 2 by the end of the show. Oh, it was a terrible tour, that. And so it went on from there.
Do you remember your first laugh?
No.
Not at all?
No idea. Although, I do have, my favourite panto gag is this. And I'll tell you why it's my favourite panto gag. The reason is because nobody laughs at it, and I think it's hilarious. And it's the dame, and when I'm playing dame, I do this every year, right? And it's in the opening spot, and you go, you've got a shopping bag, right? And you go, oh, girls, I've got a great bargain at Marks and Spencer's this morning. I got this, and it's a 3-titted bra, you see. And you pull this 3-titted bra out, I say, only a pound. Isn't that very reasonable? I don't know why it was so cheap. I think the elastics perished. And nobody laughed. And I always look into the wings and go, you see, nobody laughs at that. But I love the gags in Panto where nobody laughs. They're my favourite. Because the audience gets quite enough. I think we should have some as well.
Yeah. So where did your inner dame come from?
Where did my what?
Your inner dame.
I don't have an inner dame, it's me.
It's you?
Yeah, of course it's me. Yeah, it's only a man in a frock, isn't it?
Yeah, but you must have got influences from somewhere.
No, I've never. I mean, I've seen some fantastic dames, and but I've never aspired to be any of them. I don't know what my favourite part in Panto is Ugly Sister, and the reason I like Sister best is because they're the baddies, and you've got somebody to work with, i.e. your other sister, and they're absolutely evil. You get some real acting to do, because when it comes to the ticket tearing scene, it is just fantastic. And you've also got to be the one that they love to hate. They love to hate the sisters, and it's really, really important. And it's really, really important that you play it for real as well. Also, you only have to do 3 scenes in the first half and 4 scenes in the second half. And you're off before the song sheet because you get banished and you don't have to do the song sheet. Brilliant. And you can put your feet up and have a fag, a cup of tea and read Heat magazine. Fantastic.
So you've been an ugly sister with your own son. How was that experience?
That's my favourite because he and I are on the same wavelength. We look exactly like each other. We play it as twins because you can't tell us apart. I mean, there's only 20 years between us anyway. But once you've got all that slap on, you can't. And because we're so tall as well, because he and I are both 6'3", and when you've got high heels and a massive wig on, you can be up to 8 foot tall. Well, you can imagine that towering over Cinderella. It's just a horrible, horrible sight. When I play Dame, dames are always about being a mother, and the best dame that I've enjoyed playing is Mother Goose. And the reason that Mother Goose is the best dame is because, I'm sure people have told you this before, it's the best acting job. Because the great thing about Panto is it has to be a very moral story, and you've got to have a good, strong storyline, and Mother Goose is a very strong storyline, and it's got a great moral as well. And it's about an old woman who is struck by vanity, and she's a kind woman, but vanity turns her bad, and she tries to make herself look youthful and beautiful, but of course she doesn't. She just looks ridiculous, and she learns the lesson, and everybody hopefully learns the lesson from her. Unfortunately now, with Panto, Mother Goose is one of the titles that's not done. It's not a popular title. The most popular titles are Cinderella and Aladdin. And really anything else you can... Well, you can have Dick Whittington, if you like. You can have Jack and the Beanstalk, if you like. They're all right. But the 2 top ones are the ones that people tend to do. And they do it because they are popular titles and people make money off it. And they make money off it by having the story that people know, which I think is a shame, because it leaves all the traditional stuff out. And they have famous people in it. Now, I shouldn't complain because, I've got a name and therefore I get employed. But quite often what happens is there are people who have names, get employed in these jobs and they can't do it. But that's all right to an extent, because I think whatever drags people in is good, but you've got to have the other elements as well. And I'm a big traditionalist. I like tradition in Panto. I like all the stuff that it binds us as a community. I think. It's important. The stuff, it's important for children. It's like nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes are really important for children. It binds us all together. It introduces us to things that we know and understand. And I love that. And particularly when communities are so divided now, or so broken up by successive governments. Do you want me to be political?
You could be as political.
One of the things about Panto was that you could be political. I mean, it's not very political, but you could make fun of people. It's cartoon as well. So not only did you have a great fairy story, but you could lampoon people of the day. And that does happen to an extent now, but it's not such a big thing now. And of course, we don't have principal boys anymore. Because the reason for the original principal boys, who were always played by girls, was because, of course, in Victorian times, you couldn't see women's ankles. So you could get to see the whole of the women's legs. You see what was going on further up. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I think that's a shame in a way. But I don't think there's much lost by losing that. But there's still the dame element, which I really like. But talk to Germaine Greer about it. She hates it. She thinks it's awful. She thinks it's taking the piss out of women, which I don't think it is. Because I think the dame is a specific character, and it's not representing all women, and it's very clearly a man in a frock. And you're able to do things as a man in a frock that a woman couldn't do. And I've seen women trying to play dame. It doesn't work at all. I don't know why it doesn't work. But also I think it appeals to blokes who just like to get into frocks. I think all blokes like to get into frocks, don't you? You see, you've gone quite pink.
How do you think, anyway, the whole PC brigade have affected Panto recently?
I don't know. Do you think they have? You tell me.
I think people like to get offended on behalf of other people.
Well, yeah, there is a lot of that goes on. But listen, I think that I have a thing in Panto, and it's called AFS, Acceptable Family Smut, and it's about being a Blackpool seaside postcard. You can be quite rude, and you can be quite insulting to the dame, which if it was played by a woman you couldn't, because that would be offensive actually. But you can be offensive to a man in a frock, and nobody minds really. So maybe Panto enables people to get stuff off their chests. I do think people are quite right that Pantos shouldn't be rude unless you know beforehand what you're going to go and see. For instance, that apparently the one at the Palladium just recently, in fact 2 now, have been really very rude. One's with Paul O'Grady, who is just a genius, and Julian Clary. Genius. I mean, I've seen Julian Clary. He is brilliant, and he's brilliant with an audience, and he gets away with all kinds of stuff. But when you think back to Round the Horn, we were laughing at stuff we couldn't possibly have known what it was about, but we all thought it was hilarious.
It was Boner.
It was Boner, dear. Yeah. I mean, the people getting offended, I think it's more, I don't think people are offended that much. And you're quite right when you say people are offended on behalf of other people. They always say, it's not for me, I don't mind. And I want to say, yeah, well, shut up then, really. I haven't got time for any of that nonsense. But I think it gets reported in the media more than it should. I think the people who take the greatest offence are the newspapers. And I'm not very interested in them. No. Because they have to sell their papers. You see, they're doing a job as well. They have to fill their column inches in order to bring in advertising, to pay for themselves, and for their, the barons that run them to take huge amounts of money, which they then invest offshore, you know. So it's no good coming to me with all that nonsense, because it is nonsense. It's overplayed. And it's overplayed for a reason. And I've just given you the reason. Did you not know that?
I didn't know that, but thank you.
There you go. That way, you know, but they have a job to do. That's their job, you know. And we live in that kind of, mixed economy in which that kind of thing can happen. And so we must accept it, and we must accept the reason that they do it, but we must understand why they do it, you know, and we must not get offended at them, you know. And also whipping people up, really, to raise money for yourself. You go, really? You know, come on, girls, for heaven's sake.
Do you take your family much to the Panto?
Oh yeah. Going to the Panto is quite it's part of Christmas. Mind you, I once did 9 weeks at the Bradford Alhambra with the Grumbleweeds. Well, darling, I mean, they were selling Easter eggs by the end of it. It is a big Christmas thing, really, and I think it should be kept as a Christmas thing.
So the whole Easter pantos and summer pantos that they put on, should that not?
Not
a fan.
It's not for me, that, you know. If people want to do it, you know, we're all in the business. We're doing a job as well, you know. We have to raise money, and we have to make money to keep theatres going as well. These days, it's a bit like, you know, theatres have to put on big musicals now, as people want to know what they're going to see when they go. That's why, you know, those particular titles in pantomimes are so often done, because people like to know what they're getting if they're going to pay money for it.
When you were a child, then,
Yeah.
and you were sitting there watching these performers, did you ever dream that you were going to actually be on that stage?
Yeah. Well, I was. From that age onwards, because I was doing the church panto. It was all marvellous
But
to
you
me.
knew that you were going to do that
Yeah.
as a career?
Of course, yeah. Well, not all panto, you know. It's quite a mixed career, man.
Theatre, yes.
Theatre, of course, theatre, very important. Theatre is big with me. I always go to the theatre. I don't like cinema, because aside from anything else, I've got a telly that's as big as a cinema screen. In fact, it's so big that my lounge is only as big as this dressing room, which is not massive, is it? And really, in order to appreciate my telly, I should really knock through to next door's flat, so I could watch it properly, because otherwise I'm in the film anyway. And I don't go to the cinema because I don't like cinema audiences, because people watch films now like they're watching the telly. You know, they're doing their phones and they're eating stuff, and I find them really annoying.
Do you get that much in the theatre, though?
What, people on the phone?
Yeah.
Here's a good story. Well, there was somebody answered the phone 3 times in the theatre. This happened quite recently, and on the third one, the bloke went, "No, I'm in the theatre watching a play." "No, not very." Yeah. No, that's what's great about Panto anyway, because it's all absorbing. You know, people don't really have time to do their phones and stuff. You can leave all that stuff outside, and it is for children as well. You know, with stuff for grown-ups to enjoy, but it's for grown-ups to take their children. You know, that's why it's a traditional thing. It's a traditional Christmas thing that you take your children to, and it binds families.
Do you think you'll be trading the boards again anytime soon in Pantoland?
No. I did get offered one this year, so I won't be. I know, that shocked you, hasn't it?
That has.
I know, I don't know why. I mean, the tour that I'm on at the minute actually finishes too late, so I wouldn't be able to do one. And in fact, I didn't do one last year. I did a Christmas show. I did the Box of Delights at Wilton's Music Hall last Christmas. But it hasn't worked out this time. But anyway, I should be spending that Christmas with my family this time. Because, you know, you only get Christmas Day off. And sometimes you have to do 3 shows on a Boxing Day, which is quite hefty, I think. 3 shows on Christmas Eve and 3 shows on Boxing Day. Well, I've never had a more blinding excuse not to peel the sprouts. Because people look at you exhausted and flagged out and pissed in a corner going, oh, well, she's got 3 shows tomorrow.
So as a family,
Yeah,
when you go and see shows, what kind of pantomimes do you go and see with the family now?
whatever's nearest. Yeah.
You don't make a beeline for anywhere.
You don't have a choice. You live in a place and you get the panto that you're offered. That's what you get. You don't go, oh, I think I'll go to Aylesbury this year. Although people do, you know, but if you've got to make an effort to go to a pantomime, there's something wrong with your local. You know, it's just as good to go to a church panto. They're dead good fun. They're good fun to do. They're good fun to watch, you know, and they have great spirit and great heart. They're all the same to me. It doesn't bother me whether it's professional, semi-professional or amateur. I don't care. As long as everybody's having a lovely time.
And then that translates through to the audience.
Yeah, I've always believed in the spirit of a show. Like I said, it's a community thing as well. And I think, that's why I think Panto is part of a community effort. You know, it draws communities together. That's why I like the idea of not working in London. Because when you're working in London, you very often play to disparate groups, passing trade, tourists, and there are so many parts of London. So, and they're all, London's made up of communities. So people are coming from different areas. So they're coming from different communities. When you go to a town to do a pantomime, you're playing to a community, and that's what I love. And so all the people that are in the company with you are your family. And of course it binds you very close together if you're doing 2 and 3 shows a day, which is quite tiring really. You need to all get on, and we all need to be having a lovely time. And that's what I mean about the spirit of a show that comes over the footlights. I think every show I ever do has to have a spirit.
Have you ever changed anything dramatically in a pantomime before?
Change? How do you mean?
When you don't feel that something's quite right with the script or quite right with the production?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, because you have to, particularly if you're doing comedy, you really have to work on stuff till it works. You know, so I've even done a panto in Salford years and years ago that had no script. That everybody who was in it was had all done panto before, and all you got was a list of scenes and what we were going to do in the scenes. That's all it had, and well, it was terrible. It was hopeless. But so long as you've got the story straight, you can't change the story, and I would never change anything about that, because I like the stories. I think they're important, and they're important for children to know. And it doesn't matter how many times you see Cinderella, we all know the story. And I quite like that idea, that children are learning, and they're learning from it as well. But it's kind of subconscious learning, really. And that's why the morality of a show is really important. To me, anyway, you know. Other people are not bothered.
What about working with any of the greats? Are there any people that you absolutely adored working with over many years of Panto?
Yeah, all of them really. Yeah, I've had some really, really interesting ones as well. I'm just trying to think who they are. Some really delightful people. There's people I've really enjoyed watching. I tell you, when I did that one at the Alhambra, the year before, I mean, I was booked really early to do that. And the year before, my year, I did Dick Whittington, I think it was. And it was Aladdin the year before, and Billy Pearce was there, or Billy Pearce is there every year. But for some reason, the year I got asked to do it, Billy wasn't doing it. Well, I saw him with that audience, and I said, well, I'm not following that. I thought he was amazing. And watching him working with an audience is it's a beautiful thing to watch. And also, I was going to appear with the Grumbleweeds, of course, and I thought, well, there's 3 of them and only 1 of me, so they'll absolutely wipe the floor with me when I get on stage with them. But they couldn't have been kinder or sweeter. They were absolutely delightful with me. And in fact, I did the song sheet, and a year later, they rang me up and said, could they use my song sheet, because it would fill a gap in their show, and they could, and because it was a really timed song sheet, and I got it down to a fine art. And did I mind if they used it? I said, no, of course not. I said, I nicked it from somebody else. Can't remember who. They were great in Panto, outrageous as well. And who else have I worked with? Isn't that terrible? I've done over 35 Pantos, and it's really hard. I should have done my homework on this, shouldn't I? I worked with some people who were not fabulous. I can remember them more than I can remember.
Can you? Could you?
No.
You can't divulge.
No, I wouldn't either. Would you?
How did they make it difficult for you, though, or how did you make it not an enjoyable experience?
Oh, it didn't make it any less enjoyable. Oh, no. No, it just means you have to work harder, that's all. And if you work hard, you get through it quicker. Because I always think you have to do every show at 100%. Because if you do it any less, I have seen people walk through a show, and it's really hard work, It really doesn't work for you as a performer, because you get as much out of it as the audience do. You get a bit tireder than they do, but if you do it at full pelt, it's just a fantastic thing to do. It's clever. There are certain things that, do you know, all the people that I can remember working with, I can remember people who were great at Panto who I've watched, but not the great people that I've worked with so well. Is that funny? Of course, at one time I used to stooge for Hilda Baker, but I never did Panto with her, and she was a genius. I've worked with many genii, but I can't for the life of me remember them. No, I can't. I can remember old ones who I've seen. George Lacey, Nat Jackley, they were marvelous. And actually, a lot of the ones I remember are the dames. Arthur Askey, Billy Tasker, who else have we seen? I remember fairy godmothers as well, June Whitfield. A couple of fairy godmothers who I've really enjoyed are Lisa Goddard and Linda Lusardi was surprisingly good in Panto. I enjoyed working with her. She was great. But I have never not enjoyed a Panto, and I have never worked with a company that I thought was bad, ever. And I've always been lucky, I think.
What would your advice be for young people who are listening to this podcast now thinking, I want to do what he did?
Do it. Get on with it. And my advice to anybody who wants to do any of this stuff, any kind of theatre, is there's a very odd thing that's happening now, and that's people wanting to be famous. The thing is about what happens in this business is fame is a possibility out of what you do, out of the work that you do, but it's not a reason to be doing it. You have to be aware of it, that it might come up and bite you on the bum. But if you do the work, and the way to do the work is to do it, and that means getting as much practice in as you can. There was a book written once that said you had to have 10,000 hours of practice at doing something. before you could come good. And I think there's a lot in it. I don't know what the book was called. It was probably about being famous anyway, you know. And actually, I think it was more of a pamphlet than a book, really. But they worked out that they picked various famous people, and they worked out that each one of them had done not less than 10,000 hours. So my suggestion is you have to do anything that gets you on stage. Amateur, semi-professional, professional, whether it's as a stage manager or as a sound man or as a lighting man or as a prop man or as a costume maker, whatever it is, you need practice at doing it and being around it and being part of the community of it and the spirit of it, so that you can learn from other people. I learnt more as a stage manager than I ever did as an actor, in such a short space of time as well. I was a stage manager for 2 years at Chester Gateway. I learnt a lot from watching other actors and seeing what they did. I also went to college. College is good. It's good for learning how to drink. Yeah. Girls got to unwind. Come on.
Anything you do differently now, looking back on it?
On my career? No, I can't remember half of it. So, I mean, I probably would. Yeah. If I could remember it, I'd probably do it completely differently. I would.
What about the telly?
What about telly?
We haven't seen you much on TV. Obviously, you were in Benidorm the other year, which you had an absolute blast with, from what I've heard.
I've heard that.
Yeah, what was it? Cyril
Squirrel Bigcock.
Well, something like that, yeah. Cyril Babcock.
That was it. Yes, Matteo. Yeah, he was called Cyril Babcock, and he was a dance instructor. And Matteo called him Squirrel Bigcock, which I was very flattered to be called, actually. I thought it was a great name. In fact, I'm thinking of adopting it as my stage name, which beats my original stage name, which was Hilary Gilderflaps, which I had to stop because it just didn't work for some reason. I don't know why. People didn't seem to like it. Telly. No, I do telly if I get offered it. I'm just as happy being in a sound booth at getting a one-line commercial right and getting the word "the" right, said in the right way, which happens. I just have an insatiable desire to be the centre of attention. I don't really care. So long as I'm playing in the dressing up box with my chums. I love the company of actors. I love actors because they're kind, they're generous, they're quite brave, really. They are determined, and they're bonkers, and they make you laugh. And they're great people to be with. And it's much better than being in the real world. Have you ever been in the real? Oh, you're in the real world, aren't you? Yeah, I've met them people. Don't get it.
You don't like us, do you?
I don't. I'm grateful to you.
Thank you.
For being there, because otherwise I'd be hopeless. I mean, to me, plumbing is central to civilization. And frankly, I would be an anarchist were it not for the fact that I need somebody to adjust my ball cock every now and then. Frankly,
You're going to be missed in Panto this year.
Well, the thing is, I do love doing it, but it is very tiring. And when you're pushing 70, I mean, how old's Beric now?
73.
There you go, 73.
That's the thing.
Opportunities arise in the strangest places, but it'll only come from people who know how to work a podcast. So I won't be employing myself, will I?
Well, it's a new way of listening to things. It's
I know, I gather
so. Radio. So if you're into fishing, if you're into
I
gardening,
know, people say it's fantastic, but I know I will. You will teach me after this.
I will teach.
I will accept.
Thank you.
Yes, your very kind offer.
Well, we always like to finish up on a podcast with your dream panto. Now, I did give you some prior warning.
You did, which I was really rubbish at. Because, all I could come up with, like, Terry Scott and Hugh Lloyd playing sisters. I mean, I'd have me and Armat playing sisters for a kick-off. Hayley Mills was a wonderful fairy godmother. Billy Tasker, very like Arthur Askey. They were fantastic dames. as was Nat Jackley. George Lacey, I remember, had a teapot in his wig, which I thought was a fantastic idea. I've never seen anybody do it since. I did a panto in Southampton, and it was the first time I played sister with my son, and Stephanie Power was the fairy godmother, and I was sitting at the side of the stage, and our matter was on the other side of the stage. We were waiting to do the walk down, and Biggins was playing buttons at the age of 60 something. Which wasn't really right, really, but we were waiting to do the walk down, and I was sitting there in a massive gold sequin fishtail gown with a massive rack and a huge cake on top of my head, and my feet were killing me, and Stephanie Power come traipsing around with her wand dangling, and she said, "You all right?" I said, "Oh, my feet are killing me." She said, "Never forget, a woman without pain is like a day without sunshine."
What's been your favourite memory of Panto, for being in Panto?
I think probably one of the Grumbleweeds. Oh my God, this was fantastic. One of the Grumbleweeds. I can't remember how the gag went, but it was a progression of gags. And right at the end, I mean, I don't know if this is AFS or not, but one of the boys said, "Would you mind if I finish?" Because I had to follow it. He said, "Do you mind if at the end of this gag they got progressively less dressed, right?" And it was a gag. First, it started off with underpants, very large underpants, and then progressed to a barrel, then progressed to a box, to eventually one of them flying across the stage on roller skates with nothing on. Well, it absolutely brought the house down. And I don't know whether that's acceptable or not, but it was very, very funny. And it kind of worked. And I didn't mind following that anyway. I thought they were just great to work with. And the Prince Charmings always make me laugh as well. Oh, and then you get all your skin actors as well. The ones who work as the cat or... the ones I hate, they were the ones that you used to be forced to work with, like Garfield and Postman Pat. And it was some poor Corrine dressed up in some sweat-laden suit had to traipse on and mime stuff to a sound recording. Just hopeless. You know, as they were popular at the time. Yeah, they're called skin artists.
Any places you haven't enjoyed performing? Any tough crowds?
I think probably the worst that sticks in my mind was the Palace Theatre, Rose Rugog, because the Palace Theatre was stuck on the back of a miners' club, which was packed to the ginnels every night, and the theatre was empty. And in fact, the roads were not even tarmacked then. It was in the 60s. Do you know I've been working for 51 years now? And I thought, I saw Francis de la Tour celebrating 25 years in showbiz, which she did with a one-woman show at the Royal Court Theatre in London. And I went to it and I thought, how wonderful that would be. I wonder how that would feel, 25 years in the business. Well, when it was my 50th last year, do you know what I did? I forgot. I did.
No fanfare?
No. Don't care. I'm still playing in the dressing up box, and you're still in the real world. Ha!
I'd love to play in the dressing up box.
You'll get your chance. It is kind of a weekend thing, isn't it?
Did you dress up much as a child?
Oh, behave. Of course. That's what children do. That's their job. Didn't you?
Occasionally.
He's only on a weekend. No, I think it's great. I think everybody should be encouraged to do acting, to go to theatre. I think it's just a wonderful thing. It's very freeing, and a lot of the parts I play. I mean, I know this is a Panto podcast, but the parts I play in theatre now, they nearly always have to have a mental breakdown of some sort. And it just saves you having one in real life, especially if you're doing it twice nightly. It's very freeing. And I think it's great therapy, the job that I do.
So we can actually say after this podcast, Matthew Kelly looking for work?
Not actively.
Not actively.
No, I'm
But
not.
if the Panto doorbell rang?
Well, I've been really, really lucky, and I know why as well, because I'm cheap and available. That's why, and also I do really well for work. And I thought, well, actually, I must be quite good. Until about 2 years ago, I was touring Pride and Prejudice, and a producer came round and said, would I do this tour that opened in Dundee and went to Blackpool? And I went, no. She said, oh, go on. I said, no. She said, oh, please. I said, no. She said, oh, but I can't get actors to tour anymore. I thought, oh, that's how I get the work. Nobody else will do it.
What a cheek.
I know, she's dead now.
Oh. What was the turning point where you actually thought, no, telly, no, serious acting?
No, there's never a point to any of it, is there really? No, I've never chosen. But you look at my CV and it looks like I've made some fantastic choices, doesn't it?
Mm.
No, I've always gone, oh, that's a job I could do. Brilliant, I'll do that. All I can tell you is the only choices I've ever made are the ones that I can't do. And those are the only choices I will ever make. Because unless it's the best thing I've ever done, or unless it's if it's something that I couldn't put my whole heart into, then there'd be no point in doing it, and I couldn't do the job properly. So I can only do stuff that I really believe in. I mean, there are times when you have to earn money, because you have to pay your mortgage, don't you? Especially if you're an actor, because actors are rubbish at money. But that's our job, to be rubbish at money, because as far as I'm concerned, they're only beer tokens, aren't they?
And you still like to?
No, funny enough, I'm not drinking at the minute.
Aren't you?
No, I went sober for October and I've carried it on. I know. I knew you'd be shocked. You're shocked, I'm shocked. There'll be letters to the Lancet. It's never been known in medical history before.
We've got an exclusive then today.
Yeah.
Matthew Kelly.
Not forever, are you mad? What's wrong with you?
Well, Matthew, thank you so much for taking part in the podcast.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for sharing your stories.
I wish I had more. I wish I could remember them. I'll go home tonight and I'll go, oh my God, oh, I remember. Oh, and when we did. Oh, and yeah. But you know what? It's terrible when you're being interviewed. You can't remember half of the stuff that's gone on in your life.
Well, thank you so much for taking part.
That's all right. I think I was just drunk for most of it. Cheers, Rob.